All right, everyone. Again, thank you so much for being here for our webinar for the monthly series here at Cloves. Today, we're going to talk about performance analytics and CMDB on ServiceNow. So we are very excited about this webinar. I still see people logging in, but I think we should start because I don't want to ask you to wait too long. So I'm Giulia Rastelli. I'm the marketing manager here at Cloves. I'll be introducing the company pretty quick and give you some housekeeping. And then I'm going to just let our presenter take the lead. So again, the agenda, a little bit of housekeeping about Cloves, and then the performance analytics and CMDB on ServiceNow webinar by Omar, one of our technical consultant. And then at the very end, we're going to have Q&A. So for the housekeeping, the webinar is going to be recorded. So don't worry if you have to leave throughout the webinar or if you miss something or anything, you're going to have the recording as soon as we finish the webinar. We convert the webinar and we send it to you. Q&A process, you're muted, so don't talk. We're not going to hear you. You have a section in the GoToWebinar control panel that says questions. So please type in there and then I will read them to Omar at the very end of the presentation and we're going to answer them as much as we can. If there are too complicated questions or that requires a very long explanation, we're going to get back to you offline. So for any other information that doesn't concern the webinar, you can send an email to me, julia@clovesin.com or at sales@clovesin.com, and we're going to get back to you right away. Couple more things, social media, we have a lot of updates on our pages, so Facebook and LinkedIn, please follow us and like us there. You can keep up on all the new webinars and new activities that Cloves has in its everyday life. And then check out the App Store on our website. We have some cool demos, some cool service portal right now. Very, very nice, and we would love you to take a look at that. So if you cannot hear me at all, just let me know now, chat or questions, let me know because we're going to keep going and we're not going to stop. So hopefully everybody can hear me. About Cloves, I don't know how many of you are familiar with us. We are a ServiceNow partner since 2011. We're based in Santa Clara, California, so we're right next to the ServiceNow headquarters here in the Bay Area. We are a full ServiceNow shop, meaning that we can take care of every single aspect of ServiceNow, and we've done implementation in every single aspect. This year, we reached the milestone of 150 customers, which is great, and we grew the company up to 45 consultants all over the world, and therefore we executed projects globally, mostly in the US, but globally. Our services are mainly focused on CSM, end user portal, and HR this year. But as you can see, we cover every single area. These are the three topics that we believe they are the strong and hot topics that ServiceNow also is pushing. So if you guys are interested in that, please let me know. We're more than happy to give you a personal demo just for knowledge sharing. All right, so if you don't have any question about us and about Cloves and about housekeeping, I'm just going to pass the ball to Omar, and he's going to talk about performance analytics and CMDB on ServiceNow. Omar.
Thank you, Julia, for the lovely intro. As Julia mentioned, well, let me share my screen. Okay, so as Julie mentioned, my name is Omar Hamid. I'm a technical consultant for Cloves based out of San Francisco. I've been with Cloves now for a little over a year, and I've worked in IT for the better part of 6 years now. I've done countless implementations across the entire spectrum of the ServiceNow suite, including performance analytics. And I'm excited to talk to you guys today a little bit about not only what performance analytics is, and more specifically, what's new with performance analytics in Istanbul, but also different ways that we can leverage some of our data from the CMDB to get different visualizations across the organization with that CMDB data. So I'll first talk about what performance analytics is, give a little rundown of what the difference is between performance analytics and the out-of-the-box reporting functionality within ServiceNow. Then, as I mentioned, I'll talk about what specific updates there are with the new Istanbul release in performance analytics. And then I'll walk through how to actually get started with performance analytics. Now, keep in mind, this is outside of the free version of performance analytics. I'm going to talk about how to leverage CMDB data, which can only be done with the premium version of performance analytics. And just talk a little bit about how to set up indicators and breakdowns and data collection and actually get those onto a dashboard that can be shown throughout the organization. And I'm going to do so using CMDB content pack, which is available in the as a ServiceNow plugin, and using a new feature within ServiceNow called guided setup, which really just walks us through. And ServiceNow has done a really good job of making it easy to get set up with performance analytics in ServiceNow, especially when as you're able to leverage the content packs. So to start off, what makes service management manageable? Essentially, the three things are providing structure, creating visibility, and then getting proactive. Providing structure is really what ServiceNow is all about. Building.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
We're not seeing your presentation anymore, your PowerPoint. Make sure we're just seeing a blank screen.
Okay, let's see.
Sorry.
No, you're good. Thank you for calling that out.
No, it's okay. Yep, way better. Sorry to everyone. Sometimes we have this inconvenience. Great.
Okay, so as I mentioned, providing structure, creating visibility, and then getting proactive. So providing structure is really what ServiceNow is all about, as far as building out workflows and creating a structure that allows every service process to become transparent so that people can say what they're working on, how well they're doing, rather than someone coming up and just saying that they have a problem. With ServiceNow, we're actually able to build workflows and create and streamline a process that helps that request come in or helps that service to be provided. And then creating visibility. That's where analytics comes into play. Once we have a process with analytics, we're able to identify what makes the process run well and what makes it break down and the different categories in which it might break down. And through visibility, we're able to see how well we're doing at any given process. And then finally, getting proactive. This is really where performance analytics comes into play. It's the management dimension of this whole service management process. And as opposed to chasing your tail and just solving problems that you already know exist, when we have visibility into what historical data we have, we're able to then predict trends and identify bottlenecks ahead of time that actually allow us to get proactive and start to solve issues before they even become organization-wide or widespread. So what is performance analytics? It is an in-platform analytics tool that automatically creates data snapshots of your data and uses that data to calculate KPIs that are visualized by means of scorecards and dashboards. The objective is to provide insight into the performance of your processes and services. It allows companies to act upon any changes in their performance throughout the month rather than reporting on missed objectives at the end of the month. As such, PA sits in between your live reporting in ServiceNow and your monthly SLA reports. And based on the out-of-the-box KPI and dashboard content, PA can be implemented in days rather than weeks or months. So how does performance analytics differ from other products on the market or even from the reporting capabilities provided out of the box by ServiceNow? Performance analytics provides real-time, holistic reporting, which enables intelligence-based decision-making. And through that, it provides insights and clarity into the operations of an organization and its supporting services. It extends the native reporting capabilities by illustrating patterns and service metrics and revealing correlations. And what really brings value from performance analytics is the actionable intelligence that it brings about and its surfaces, which really allow you to focus on improving services, which is the key. So what are some of the challenges and business impact that derive the need for performance analytics? Management reports focus on the past, and reporting can become the blaming game. The analysis focuses on what went wrong and when, instead of where to focus on improving. There's a big disconnect between reporting and underlying data. There's a distrust of the data, leading to not using the providing reports. And then reporting is a manual process. Inconsistency and human error oftentimes result in errors that might be widespread and go unnoticed for who knows how long. And then reporting team can oftentimes be busy with repetitious work. A lot of time can be spent building out reports, and that time could be better spent analyzing data and understanding where bottlenecks are to understand or to make data-backed decisions on what should be next. So jumping in now to what's new in Istanbul, which is ServiceNow's their newer release. One of the new features that comes with performance analytics, an additional plugin, is Spotlight, which allows you to prioritize work based on multiple weighted criteria and quickly identify high priority tasks. So essentially what that means is historically with PA, you're able to kind of identify a certain criteria or a certain group of records based off of one certain criteria. With Spotlight now, we're able to take several different criteria and assign weight to those, and then understand which of these certain records go beyond that threshold of what that weight. So for example, here we have this blue circle, which represents all the open incidents. And let's say we want to see anything that is a critical business service, a high priority, and the SLA is breached. So those are three different criteria that will allow us to identify or to spotlight which records go above that threshold. And notice each of these different criteria have a weight associated to them. So the definition or whatever becomes identified as, or in our spotlight, is whatever goes beyond that threshold of we can put it at 1600 and say that anything that goes above 1600 we show here. And then another new feature with performance analytics in Istanbul is the fact that all users can create or view dashboards. With responsive canvas enabled, which I'll show you later, users with any role can create and share dashboards in ServiceNow. Users without a role can view dashboards that are shared with them. Some widgets, such as performance analytics widgets and interactive filters, can still only be added to dashboards by users with an appropriate performance analytics role. So essentially what that means is we're able to show these dashboards and performance analytics reports to anyone within our organizations. And then we have new dashboard permissions and sharing. Essentially what that means is we're able to create dashboards and reports within performance analytics that we can share with other users and actually collaborate on those different reports, so allowing other users that might not necessarily have a role to actually get in there and collaborate on these different reports. And then domain separation for MSPs. Users can view scores from multiple selectable domains on a single dashboard or scorecard, configure data collection across a domain hierarchy, and control how collected scores are attributed to parent and child domains. So essentially you can collect data from one domain and display it on another domain. One thing to keep in mind here, this is a separate plugin, well, an additional plugin to Performance Analytics, and for this also responsive canvas needs to be enabled. And then a few other things which I'll briefly touch on. The scores table migration to provide optimal performance and enable the collection of larger sets of scores data. The scores table was split into the score level 1 and score level 2 tables. This really allows for an optimized performance as we're collecting scores. One thing to note here, if you have performance analytics and you are upgrading to Istanbul, you will have to upgrade your scores to this new schema. And we can talk a little bit about how to do that afterwards. And then there's another type of breakdown widget visualization called a tree map, which is available. It basically breaks down scores as boxes, where the larger boxes indicate a higher score for a breakdown and the smaller boxes indicate a lower score. And they are also color coded to indicate the score and whatever criteria we set. And then guided setup and embedded help, which allows to quickly configure performance analytics for various applications using guided setup. I will walk through this in the demo at the end as we leverage some of that CMDB data. So now, actually getting started with performance analytics. I've heard a lot that performance analytics can be somewhat confusing as far as understanding how to actually make the dashboards or how to actually populate some of those dashboards with data. So I'd like to just walk through the different aspects or the different components of performance analytics and the proper way to go about setting up a scorecard or a dashboard so that we can get some of that data in a manner that allows us to visualize it and share within the organization. So I will walk through each of these different components with respect to the CMDB. So I'll provide an example for each of these from the CMDB. So first we have our indicator sources, then indicators, our breakdown sources and our breakdowns. Then we have to actually collect the data and then turn that data into scorecards and dashboards. So what is an indicator source? An indicator source is a source record that identifies a table or a view of interest and a set of conditions for which to gather data. An example here would be sort of a generic configuration items indicator source. Essentially what that means is we're taking the data from the CMDB CI table and filter and basically saying this is where we're collecting our data from. This is the source for our indicators. So we can just put any condition on these indicator sources. For the purposes of this demo, the condition is just any CI that's been created at or before today. For the out-of-the-box performance analytics, the free version, you'll see the indicator source is going to be your incident, which just, and the facts table there is just the incident table, which means it's basically pulling all of the incidents at whatever conditions you set. So you could say conditions between, or condition all the incidents from this year or last year or whatever you want it to be. And then indicators. So these are the real kind of KPIs or the actual metrics that we're tracking. They're statistics that businesses track to measure current conditions and to forecast trends. They provide you with key information on how your business is doing. And the three different types of indicators that we have are automated, manual, and formula. So for an automated indicator, this is really anything that's used to automatically collect scores on a regular basis. Each indicator is linked to an indicator source. So essentially what that means is for all of our, and this is what most of our indicators are going to eventually be, assuming that the data for these indicators is derived from the ServiceNow instance, meaning if the data is there, then we can set up these indicators to automatically collect those scores from that data source within ServiceNow. An example of that could be number of CIs installed. Then we have manual indicators. So these are used for data that cannot be retrieved from your ServiceNow instance because it comes from an outside system. So this might be something as related to CIs if we're maintaining financial information on CIs, but we're maintaining it, let's say, in an Excel spreadsheet. That sounds dreadful, but let's say for all intents and purposes, that's what we're doing. We would create a manual indicator to and assign somebody to actually input that data so that we can have that visualized with the rest of our data. And then a formula indicator, which is based on the historic data of other indicators or based on analytical functions. So this is basically taking either an automated or manual indicator and pretty much creating some kind of function with it. For the example here, I use the CMDB accuracy ratio, which as a formula indicator would be represented as 1 minus the sum of CI's fault count divided by the number of configuration items times 100. And that'll give us our CMDB accuracy ratio. So then we have our breakdown sources. These breakdown sources define what values you can select and when you apply a breakdown. For example, a configuration item install status could be a breakdown source. And we need to identify that the breakdown choices come from the sys choice table. So we're basically saying even though the install status is mentioned on this at the CI level, we need to identify the choices that are available, which comes from that sys choice table. And that's what our breakdown source is. And then our actual breakdowns. These can be automated or manual, and they associate a breakdown source with specific fields, allowing you to filter data from tables with those fields using breakdown elements from the breakdown source. So an example here could be CI status, where the breakdown source is CI install status, and the breakdown mapping connects the CMDB CI record to the install status field. So this is leveraging our breakdown source, which is our install status, and then taking that choice field and mapping the CI record to the install status field. Just a side note, because CI classes, well, if we want to use CI classes, if we want to break down data by CI class, we should do a manual breakdown because of the fact that the CI classes are referenced as different tables. So just keep that in mind if you plan on building a report and want to break down by CI class. And then collecting data. So we can run historical data collection once. Well, it only needs to be run once to collect scores on existing data, and then we would enable scheduled data collection to begin collecting scores on new data automatically. So let's say today I want to see how many CIs are in our system. I would run a data job to collect all the scores or all the records of CIs created in the past, and then set up an additional job to maybe we can set the frequency for daily to daily collect all of the CIs that are created as time goes on. So again, historical data collection only needs to be done once for a specific indicator, and then we would also set up a scheduled data collection at any given frequency to collect new data automatically. Data collection jobs automatically collect scores for automated indicators and breakdowns. And you must have Performance Analytics Premium to collect data for tables other than incident. So as I mentioned, with the unpaid version of Performance Analytics, which allows for collecting data on incidents, you are able to run the scores only with the out-of-the-box KPI or the out-of-the-box indicators that are available. You aren't able to create new indicators or breakdowns, and you are not able to collect data for any other tables other than the incident table. And then we have our scorecards. So a scorecard displays scores for a single indicator, and it allows you to perform detailed analysis of the metric that the indicator tracks, such as by comparing scores over time and aggregating data over different time periods. So this is really where we're actually seeing what our data is doing, or after we set up an indicator, we can view our scorecard and look over time at our trending data as far as how many CIs were created at any given point in time. And when I jump over to the actual demo, we will, or to the actual instance, we'll see how these scorecards work and some of the functionality behind them. And then dashboards, I think we're all familiar with dashboards. They contain actionable data visualizations that help you improve your business process and practices. This is basically just a compilation of different scorecards, and you can also add different widgets to these dashboards. Keep in mind when using a new content pack, there are certain out-of-the-box dashboards and scorecards that come along with those, which I will show you. And as I mentioned, we are focusing a little bit on, we're focusing more on CMDB today. So with the CMDB content pack, some of the out-of-the-box KPIs that we're able to look at are the average CI's fault count, the number of CIs discovered, number of new CIs, number of open incidents on CIs, the number of purchased CIs, the sum CI's fault count, CMDB accuracy ratio, which I went over the formula for, the CMDB health scorecard, the sum cost of purchased CIs, the overall health average of percentage, the number of monitored configuration items, number of configuration items, sum cost of CIs, and the percent monitored configuration items. And also the percent CIs ownership, CMDB health results, number of CIs installed, and open changes against the CI. So with that, I will jump into the actual system, and I will walk through actually setting up these different things with the content packs. Julia, can you see my screen? The
Yes, I can.
okay.
The ServiceNow, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so I've already installed the CMDB content pack, which, as I mentioned, has those out-of-the-box KPIs that we're able to track. Now, to actually set up these content packs once they're installed, we have the guided setup feature with Performance Analytics, which really makes it easy to set up the different jobs to collect the data so that we can actually start to visualize some of these things on a dashboard or scorecard. One thing to note here, so this is the Performance Analytics guided setup. These modules are locked or unlocked based on whether you have installed or activated the plugin. So if you see a lock here, that just means you have to activate the plugin. And another thing to note is these content packs are available for download or for activation, but you can't actually collect any scores on them unless you have the premium version of Performance Analytics. So here we have the configuration management content pack set up. And to get started with it, you just click on Get Started, and then it tells us to review the provided indicator sources. So if we look at our indicator sources, we can see the different ones that are available. Just to keep things simple, I'll look at the CMDB CI indicator source. And as I mentioned, you're really just with the indicator source, identifying which table we are going to be deriving that data from. You can see here the facts table that's selected is configuration or CMDB underscore CI table. And the condition is created at or before today. So that should pull any CI that's been created on or before today. So once we've reviewed these different indicator sources, we can mark this as complete. And then the next step for us is to review our actual indicators. So we need to review these to ensure that the metrics we want to measure are tracked properly. So if we look at the indicators that are provided, I will look at average CI, or we can look at number of CIs discovered, just to quickly look at the form. And it just shows, this shows the, this is gonna show us what CIs are discovered, and our indicator source is CMDB CI discovered, which is pulling from that discovered CI, from that CI, same CMDB underscore CI table. And we can set up additional conditions, any access control if we want to limit the visibility. Certain time period, we can set up a breakdown matrix or collect a breakdown matrix, or different collection periods. And then the direction, minimize or maximize. So the way that that's defined is essentially if we want to minimize something, then it's, you know, if it's like if we don't want a lot of incidents, then we would put minimize. If we do want a lot of CIs, then we would put maximize. So that's really depending on the organization goals. With unit, we can select what the actual unit is, whether it's number, etc. So once we've reviewed these different indicators, we can mark it as complete. And then the next step is for us to review our breakdown sources. These are going to ensure, we need to ensure here that they match our table structure and that they include the elements that we want. So when we hit configure, I will use the example that we mentioned, which was install status. You can see here the facts table is the sys choice table and the field is sys ID. So essentially what that's doing is pulling all of the choices where the table is CMDB CI, the element is install status, and the language is English. So this is going to give us all of the different install status choices that show up whenever we are looking at that CI form and click that install status dropdown. So if we look at these, we like them, we will just mark this as complete. And then we would review our breakdowns. So we review the breakdowns to ensure that we can filter scores by the appropriate elements. So what that means is essentially making sure that if we're looking at the CI status breakdown, just to maintain consistency, we can see the install status breakdown source is selected, and then the breakdown mapping connects the CMDB CI table to the install status field. And this is what allows us to see which options are available when we're actually looking at the different scorecards. So we will mark that one as complete. And then the fun part is collecting data. Well, I should say the not so fun part. Here we mentioned that we want to create one for historical data and then one for ongoing data collection. So here we have the historic data collection. this only requires us to execute it once. So whenever we're ready to actually collect that data, we can just go here and then execute the job. This usually takes a little while, depending on how long the start and end date are. You can make it a fixed start end date or a relative start end date. So fixed meaning I want it between January 1st, 2016 and February 26th of 2017. Relative start date could mean I wanted to pull data from 30 days ago, and it'll pull data from 30 days of today's date. And as I mentioned, these jobs usually take a little while, as do most collection jobs, depending on how many records we're actually trying to pull. And then we would set up a daily data collection job, which allows the system to automatically generate or collect those records at whatever frequency we deem. So again, we can do relative or fixed for these data collections. So let's assume that both of these are set up how we'd like them, and mark it as complete. And then our scorecards. So the scorecards allow us to see the indicators for the data that we collected which allows us to begin exploring our actual scores. So if we look at number of CIs installed. Now we can see that no CIs were installed between this time period that we have, although we are able to adjust the time period that we're looking at by moving this time series chart here at the bottom. And another cool thing to note on these scorecards is that we are able to add a comment at any given point on the data series. So if at 72, we are curious to know on June 16th why 72 CIs were created, then we can put a comment here and say why, well, you get the idea. So you would add a comment here, and it actually, once you add a comment, you can see it from the scorecard when you hover over, as well as from the comments tab. And another thing that we can do from this view or from the scorecard is set up targets and thresholds. So a target is essentially if we are trying to hit a certain number of records at any given point. It might not necessarily make sense for this specific scorecard, since we're looking at number of CIs installed. But let's say we do want to have 50 CIs installed. What we would do is click here and then set the target to 50. And notice that this line here jumps up to 50, and it allows us to visualize what our target is compared to the rest of the data at any given time point on the chart. And as we hover over, we're able to see here that 72 were created on this date. The target was 50. And when we click on it, it shows us our gap, which is 22, meaning 44%. Now, this is where those directions come into play, where we were looking at minimizing or maximizing. Now, if we were maximizing, then that means 72 is good because it's more than 50. Whereas if we're minimizing, then this would be red, and it would be a bad thing because we are less than 50. And then we have thresholds, which we can set, which basically allow us to notify or allow the system to notify us if a certain threshold is met. So if our target is 50 and we want to be notified when we hit 40, then we would set our threshold here, and it would allow us to visualize what our threshold is, meaning it gives us a little bit of a buffer so that we can have time to identify the issue and remediate it before it actually becomes a problem, as in passing the target. And these thresholds can be set to either identify from an all-time low and all-time high, and meaning the highest that it's ever been or the lowest that it's ever been, or you can just set a fixed number to say if it's more than or less than. And then just going into breakdowns. So this is where our breakdown sources come into play. If you'll remember, the CI status pulls from the sys choice table, and we had the condition set so that it only pulls those choices which are on the CMDB CI table. And that provides us with all of the options available for updating the CI status on an actual CI form. And you can see here the different options that are there out of the box. Then our breakdown sources allows us to break them, or our breakdowns allows us to break them down. So if we want to see only those CIs that are installed in June 2016, then this is what we're looking at. Hit the little X to clear it, and then move on. So back to guided setup. And then I will assume that the scorecards are all good. I will show you quickly a couple of the dashboards that come out of the box with these content packs, and then I will open up the floor for questions. This dashboard shows us the number of configuration items. We can click into it again and get that scorecard view to allow us to break down into more granular data, looking at different time series. We can see here that it's pretty consistent across with the demo data that was provided. And with these dashboards, we're actually able to add other widgets or other scorecards, really to help us customize customize as we see fit. And as I mentioned before, with the Istanbul release, the performance analytics widgets are able to be viewed by users that might not necessarily have a role, which is a new update. So with that, thank you all for your time. I will open up the floor for questions. Julia, do we have any questions?
Yes, yes, we do. So Tessa asked, when you have performance analytics working with CSM, do you need to have premium to collect data from CSM tables like cases and accounts?
Yes. So for collecting data for any table outside of the incident table, you will need to have Performance Analytics Premium. There are content packs available once Performance Analytics Premium is purchased that allows you to have some pre-configured dashboards and scorecards and indicators. But to answer the question simply, yes, you need to have Premium in order to collect scores for CSM data.
Perfect. She also asked, so do the various performance analytics content packs mean that you need to use performance analytics differently across your various ServiceNow products?
No, so the content packs are really just to help you. They are there as pre-configured scorecards. So let's say if you have performance analytics and you are a heavy user of customer service, then you can install the customer service content pack, and it'll give you a handful of out of the box indicators or scorecards which you can look at. Although that doesn't limit you from creating custom KPIs or from building out custom indicators and breakdowns so that you can get your own scorecards as you please.
All right. I don't have any other question. Oh no. Bradford asked, the demo was using out of the box performance analytics.
It's the out of the box premium performance analytics. So it's not the one that's provided with incident management. Yes, but it was using the out of the box performance analytics with the additional plugins of the CMDB content pack, and also the responsive canvas, and through guided setup.
Perfect. He says thank you. All right. Other questions? This is the time. If you don't have any, or you might have them later, just send us an email again. Sales@closing.com or Julia, GIULIA @closing.com. And we will be super happy to answer all your questions. Thank you, Omar, for the amazing presentation. Thank you guys for attending the webinar. See you next month.
Okay. Thank you, Julia.
Bye,
Bye,
guys.
everybody.
Bye, everyone.